Now the servo has been centered and you can connect the servo horn. Welcome to Big Sound Hobbies. On my upgrades part 1 video, I focused on weight redistribution and lower center of gravity by swapping the position of the much heavier battery to the front end and the lighter ESC to the back. It resulted in 2% shift to weight distribution, going from 54% to 56% front weight bias and lowering the overall weight by 5 grams. In today's video, I'm going to focus on a new servo. From the previous video, I mentioned that with the ESC relocated to the back, I need to extend the servo wire. As you can see here, the stock servo wire is too short. There are a couple of ways of extending the servo wire. The easiest way is to just use an extension like this. But as most of you know, the stock servo is a bit lacking. Even if you get rid of the servo saver, this is one upgrade that I recommend. Plus, the new servo comes with a much longer servo wire, which will be perfect for my knees. Additionally, it adds a bit more weight to the front end, at the same time helping with the weight distribution further. Let's take a look at the weight. The stock servo weighs in at 5.6 grams, and the Emax servo weighs in at 9.2 grams. So with the new servo, I'll be adding 3.6 grams, a small bit of weight to the front end. There are much better servos out there, such as the Reeves 99 Micro, which is probably the best steering servo that you can get for SCX24. And then there are servos from Sabex and others. But for the B-17, I have decided to go with a cheap but effective Emax EA08 MA2. It's a 12-gram mini metal gear servo. Emax offers digital and analog servos, and this is the cheaper analog version. I paid $8.73 for it. I already have a video detailing a step-by-step installation of the Emax servo, so I won't bore you with another install video. Instead, I'll post the link to the Emax servo install video up at the top and also add a link in my video description. But I would like to highlight a few key areas that I get asked a lot. The number one question that I get asked is, do I need a new servo mount? This is the stock servo mount. The answer is no. Although the Emax servo is a bit taller and wider and deeper, it will still fit into the stock servo mount. Here you can see the Emax servo sitting inside the stock servo mount. However, there are a few things that you need to watch out for. Question 2. Do I have to do any mods to the stock servo mount? Answer is yes, but it is very minor modification. Due to the taller size of the servo, there's a gap between the servo mount and the servo. Therefore, it will require a longer screw to mount the servo properly. The screw from the top of the diff cover is just the right length that you need. If you plan to upgrade the front diff cover to HR brass diff cover, it comes with stainless screws, so you can actually use the top 2 screws from the diff cover, which I will be doing here. Also, as for the gap, you can 3D print a spacer for it. But the last time I did it, I didn't have a 3D printer. So I ended up using O-rings that I picked up a set from the Harbor Freight. Here's the set. It's a 225-piece nitrile O-ring assortment. Item number 67677. I'm going to need 2 of A005 O-rings. The O-rings were still working well, so I'll do the same here. After all, it is just to fill the gap. So here's the modification. The servo wire on Emax servo comes straight out at the back. In order to minimize any binding, I'm going to make a small notch at the back of the servo mount using a Dremel or file so that the wire sits flush. Here you can see I notched a small cut using a file so that the bottom part of the wire sits flush. You can see the bottom part of the wire sits flush. Here you can see the Emax servo mounted onto the stock servo mount. You can see the gap has been filled using the O-ring and the wire sits flush. Question number 3. Is any modification needed on the servo? Yes. In order to help with the travel and clearance between the chassis, I'm going to trim a bit of the angle on servo with a flush cutter so that it will move freely up and down. Question number 4. What servo horn should I be using? As for the servo horn, Emax servo comes with a few different options. The single servo horn has 3 holes, and it looks like the most optimal choice. However, it is a bit longer than the stock, and then the holes don't seem to line up. The cross-shaped servo horn actually works better. It has the correct length and the hole, so I am going to use it. What I'll be doing is I'll be cutting off these 3 pieces, which I don't need, with a flush cutter, and then use the 1 piece that is left. Here's the 3 ends that have been cut off, and the servo horn that I'll be using. Here it is, with the Emax servo installed back into the B-17 Betty. Question number 5, what else do I need to do? You need to center the servo before connecting the servo horn and the steering link to the drag link. You center the servo by powering on the transmitter first and then turning on the ESC. But before you do that, you need to plug in the servo wire to the ESC. Now the servo wire is too long, so I shortened it to correct length and then zip tied it. And I'm going to plug in the connector to STR, which stands for steering, making sure that the negative side, in this case the dark brown wire, is plugged in at the bottom. Now turn the receiver, then the ESC. Check to make sure that the servo is working. Now the servo has been centered and you can connect the servo horn. After connecting the servo horn and steering link to the drag link, check to make sure everything works. I'm noticing that the tires are slightly off-centered, so I'll use the channel 1 trim to set it correctly. Now that I have everything put back together, let's check where we are. Weight-wise, we're at 228.5 grams. Prior to the servo upgrade was at 226.2, so we went up by 2.3 grams. The weight distribution still stays at 56% front and the 44% rear. For as far as the total cost, I paid $8.73 for the Emax servo, so adding that to the overall cost, I am at $161.67. With the Emax servo installed, the overall weight went up by 2.3 grams to 228.5 grams, but it had no effect on the overall weight distribution. This means that we still have a bit of work to do to get to the weight distribution that I'm looking for. Hope you found the information helpful. Please like and subscribe and make sure to hit the notification bell to be notified of future videos. Thanks for watching Bigs on Hobbies.